And I want to start at the very beginning because it's not an air disaster that I was intimately familiar with. It was happened a while ago, but it's still, I think, the worst air disaster in history. More people died in this airplane collision than I think in any other disaster. And we've seen some big airliners go down. But what is interesting about the story of Tenerife is that it was really an unforced error that was an accumulation of very poor decisions based on some really weird incentives. So let me share with you a little bit of what I recall here. So basically, there is a flight, and now I probably won't even remember what it is, Lufthansa or something like that, but it's a 747, and they are going to some place in the Canary Islands, I believe. They get diverted to Tenerife because of an accident at the airport. So they just get delayed. They're going to still make it there, but they're redirecting all the traffic there, and they're landing airplanes. And this pilot, a pilot who is a veteran pilot, I don't know how many decades he's been on the job, but is also a safety instructor for the airline. So he knows all of the procedures in and out, all these things to do. What he does is he realizes that because of the crew's sleep requirements and things like that, if they don't leave the island in an hour, they're going to have to kind of shut down for an evening. And then he is waiting for the fog to lift. So they're getting delayed on fog. And then he decides to get the plane refueled to save him some time in wherever the destination is. And the refueling starts happening while the fog lifts. And so he sees this window closing. And it's just like all these things that keep accumulating in his mind. And eventually, he decides the plane is refueled, the fog is starting to roll back in, and he is just going to take off without clearance from the tower. And runs it up to full throttle. The first officer protests a little bit, and the reveal here is that at the other end of the runway, there is another 747, and he can't see it, and they can't stop, and the two jets collide. And this is not a mechanical error. It's not weather-related particularly. If people had followed their procedures, if they had not made human errors in this process, those people would be presumably alive. We would have avoided the worst disaster in human history. And you think about this. You think, how could a pilot just get so frustrated with a redirect and then a weather delay and then a refueling delay to put 600, 700 people's lives in jeopardy? And I think what they talk about here is that we get caught up in the act of losing. And oftentimes we get so obsessed with mitigating the loss or avoiding more and more loss that we will do anything to overcome it, even if the downside far outweighs the upside. Yep. And I think this was a classic case of he didn't want to keep losing it. Hopefully you and I and anyone listening is not going to be in this kind of situation where they will make some sort of grave error like this, especially that affects other people. One of the things I was thinking about, Bjorn, in a realistic sense, is there was a celebrity, and I'm not going to name her name, this was years ago, but she was behind a car at a crosswalk. I don't remember if you remember this. And there was I think a mother pushing a child in a stroller in front of the car. And she couldn't see them because they were in front of the car in front of her. But she decides that she gets so fed up, she's laying on the horn, the cars are moving. She cuts around the outside, guns it, hits the mother and the kid, kills both of them as she's barreling through the crosswalk. And it's like one of those things where, to me, it's like, what would have been the harm in waiting another 10, 15, 30 seconds? Yeah. And now you've got two fatalities because of this impatience, because of what I thought was this inability to lose, this irrational desire that this loss is going to be permanent forever, whatever it is. And the stakes are sometimes so high. I was just thinking about that, like on a smaller scale, and yet big stakes. But how many times on a small scale do we make silly decisions like this that end up costing us a bunch, that nobody dies? But I certainly feel like I've gotten caught up in this as well.